in order for us to learn what we learned. Who's going to volunteer for that? Are you? Am I? You know, the guy who volunteered for that is probably more evolved than any of us. It's a completely different way of looking at it. You know, some people...
Oh, yeah. No, it is. I totally understand exactly what you're talking about. Somebody has to, like, go ahead and set the pace because... And we're still learning from that. I mean, people might not call it learning, but we're still having experiences based on what transpired. You know, so there's still a lesson that's being learned, even that long ago.
Oh, and that lesson will always be learned because it feeds into the collective. Because there really is no time, right? So we're all growing and learning everything all the time at the same time. So, you know, that lesson is now part of the library of human experience. Somebody had to do that. I mean, you know, who had this idea that we were supposed to come to Earth and have a conflict-free existence? That makes no sense. You know,
right.
We can be conflict-free in the higher realms, but once we decide that we want to have bodies and live on Earth, there's going to be conflict, because that's how you grow.
Right. Very true. Very true. Well, I want to know a little bit more about your new book. What's in your new book? What's coming? I mean, what kind of which subject? Which way did you go? I'm not real familiar with the title or the content.
The title is Embracing Death: A New Look at Grief, Gratitude, and God. Hold on just one second, please. Right. And it's coming out in September. And it's published by O Books, and it's kind of the follow-up to my last book, A Swan in Heaven. A Swan in Heaven was really about my personal journey being introduced to interdimensional communication and death in the afterlife. And this book, somebody reviewed it recently, and they said, you know, in the first book, you show all this vulnerability. You know, you're a mother who's lost a child, and you're coming at this from a place of raw emotion, and you're so open that you're being led by your guides to new information. He said in the new book, you're coming from wisdom. And it's really different. The new book was also completely channeled, but it's written in a slightly different way. It's all about the way our culture, modern American Judeo-Christian culture, is so steeped in mythology and superstition and misconception about death, and that if we could release that and realize that death is like just walking through a door from one room to another, our behavior as humans would change. The fear of death is pretty much the core of all neurosis in human behavior. The reason we dominate each other, the reason we're violent, the reason we're bigoted, the reason we're judgmental is because the ego, which sustains us on Earth, is afraid that it will be annihilated, is afraid that it will disappear. And if you realize that the true self, the essence, the soul that you are, can never, ever disappear, when it dies, it just drops this body and goes on to live in another form. With that understanding, there's nothing to be afraid of. Could you imagine what human life would be like if people weren't constantly fighting, sorry about that, for a foothold to protect the ego? This is my country. This is my family. This is my land. This is my house. This is my car. You know, all these things that we're protecting to defend. If you could step back and see that kaleidoscope view of it, would change everything. And the way that you step back and see the kaleidoscope view of it is to realize that there is no death, that this doesn't end. Only this form of ourselves actually ends. We just change to another form. And there's so many dimensions and so many levels and possibilities of what we are that there's nothing to be afraid of. We're not going to disappear. We're just going to get higher and higher.
It makes me, do you ever wonder the level of spirituality, and it just seems like there's this massive amount of popularity of spiritual development and awareness as of lately, and I don't know, I could be using that word wrong, but or that sentence may have come out wrong, but that's just me. That's just me noticing it. Do you notice that, or do you think that this awareness has been this massive, for years and years and years, or do you feel like there's been kind of a shift in a bigger awareness bubble?
Well,
I guess
the reason the awareness is getting more massive is because of the internet. I mean, in really simple terms and simple human body ego terms, we have mass communication. So I can write a book and put out a website and be on your radio show, and all these people are hearing me, where 20 years ago that would not be possible. I mean, I would love to say that there's some big cosmic reason for it, and there is, because we're evolving, of course. And there's a lot of information coming to us that's leading us to mass awareness. The internet and mass communication and technology is part of that evolution. For example, back in 1950, China invaded Tibet. Tibet was a stronghold of Buddhism, where it was sort of a mystical, hidden thing for centuries, for thousands of years. And when China invaded Tibet, they burned the monasteries and they chased out the monks, and the monks went to different parts of the world for political sanctuary. And eventually the monks and the teachings came to the West. And so now we're in about 1960s, 60s through 70s, all of a sudden Buddhism becomes very popular. And now we have these Buddhist concepts, including ideas like karma, in our Western culture. Well, that was part of this mass expansion of our awareness. That was part of the plan that was obviously meant to happen. So that's one example of how an event, seemingly tragic, like the Chinese invasion of Tibet, actually served to further the awareness of the whole. So now the years are going by and the decades are going by and our technology is improving, bringing us up to present time, and now we have the internet. So, you can go online and learn everything there is to know about Buddhism and do guided meditation and read the Tibet Book of the Dead and learn how to guide people's souls as they're crossing over. It's all right there. So, Of course, there's mass expansion. Absolutely.
It is massive, that's for sure. A friend of mine, Patrick, and I talk about this a lot too, and we actually came up with that conclusion. We thought that I'm sure that had a lot to do with it. It's probably, I don't know if it's kind of this sore subject or not for you, but I'm going to ask it anyways.
There are no
2012. Okay.
And I knew you were going to say that. You're going to say 2012, weren't you?
Yeah, 2012. So, there's so much, confliction, and people have different ideas. And, of course, they're being spoon-fed a lot of the negatives, and instead of seeing it as an actual positive. And a shift, so I was really interested in getting your opinion on 2012.
Okay. Well, before you can understand that, you have to first understand that there is no time. And timelessness is very difficult to understand if you haven't done a lot of meditation and traveling in higher planes of consciousness. There is no time. Everything in the universe is happening simultaneously. That's why for example, when I talk to my son or my guide, I'll sit here and I'll think of a question, and I'll think, what did that mean when such and such happened? And before I've even finished the question, the answer is there, and my son is talking to me. If there was time and space, it would mean that I would have had to call him to me from a very, very long distance, because he's dead. He's not in the physical realm. So where is he? Is there a linear space that he had to travel from point A to point B to get to me? Is there a remote location in the universe called heaven where he lives? No. It doesn't work that way at all. We're all just vibrating on different frequencies, but they're all existing simultaneously. So, with understanding timelessness that way, the year 2012 means absolutely nothing. It's a human device of measuring time. It's meaningless. And whenever anybody asks me this question, my answer is, or they'll even say to me, ask Danny.